and welcome everyone. Welcome to today's podcast. We are very honored to have a very distinguished guest with us, Dr. Shakti Upadhyay, a biotechnologist with over 4 decades of remarkable contributions in academic research as well as industrial R&D. Dr. Upadhyay holds a doctorate from the University of Paris, and he further honed his expertise through post-doctoral research at esteemed institutions like UCLA and Harvard Medical School. Throughout his career, Dr. Upadhyay has seamlessly bridged the gap between scientific discovery and real world healthcare solutions. His pivotal role as senior scientist at National Institute of Immunology, research director at Reliance Life Sciences, and chief research officer at the Murugappa Group demonstrate his commitment to driving innovation in biotechnology. Dr. Upadhyay has been a visiting professor at the Medical University in Poland as well, where he spearheaded the development of phototherapeutic technologies. Today, we will dive into his fascinating journey as a scientist and explore the intersection between modern biotechnology and the ancient Ayurvedic system, specifically the Panch Mahabhuts, the five elements of nature. Welcome, Dr. Shakti. We are so honored to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Priyanka. It's my pleasure, and it's really nice to be with you today. And I look forward to talking to you. In fact, I have been listening to all your podcasts, and you make it so interesting. So it will be really interesting to talk to you on these subjects.
No. Thank you. Thank you. And it's an absolute honor to have you on the podcast with us. Given your versatile experience, given your 4 decades of experience in this field, it is absolutely an honor to educate ourselves as well as our viewers on what is it that you're working on, what have you seen over the last 4 decades, because it's always interesting to talk to people who have been in the field, who have spent their life research on these subjects, and to see how these discoveries can be helpful to the ordinary man of today. So that's the purpose that we have here. And at UVAP, we work a lot on making sure that we get into the root of things. And that's where, we really want to talk to you and learn from you on this subject.
Thank you so much for the nice words that you have said. Okay.
And so, Dr. Shakti, just to get started, as a modern scientist, and especially who is working in the field of biotechnology, how did you get interested in a topic that's at the core of the traditional system of medicine, Ayurveda?
Yeah, actually, it goes back to 30 years when I was a scientist at the National Institute of Immunology. I was working on one project specially, which was funded by Department of Biotechnology, the Department of Science Technology. And this project was focused on studying the immunomodulatory effects of the Indian medicinal plants used in Ayurveda. So this is a project which was given to me. So I was a little curious how these plants are used in Ayurveda. At that time, I did not have any knowledge about Ayurveda. Just like any other scientific student of science, I was more into Western way of education. And then since I was abroad, so I was more focused on doing scientific research. But I was very intrigued by that, how in Ayurveda, these medicinal plants were identified, which could have effect on the immune system. So I first wanted to understand what is Ayurveda. So I started reading books and articles. I also met several Ayurvedic experts also. I attended many scientific conferences. And gradually, as I went forward, I began to understand the intricacy of Ayurveda and the depth of knowledge that Ayurveda has. And initially, of course, it was a little challenging for me because the terminology which is used in Ayurveda, it's our tendency that we simply translate into English. When you say Panchabhuta, which is like five elements, and when you describe the five elements, this will be earth, water, fire, air, and space. So when you translate it directly, it does not mean much in a scientific language. So I thought, what all this terminology is all about. So I went more deeper, and I understood that this terminology is not just in a literal sense one has to take, but rather these are metaphorically represents actually the deep meaning of each word that is used. These are actually the keywords. So that's how I began to understand. And the second fundamental principle that I learned was the tridosha. So these were the two things, Panchabhuta and tridosha, because then I realized that this Ayurvedic system of medicine is based around these two fundamental principles. So that's how I got initiated into Ayurveda, and then I have been studying about it, and I find it very, very fascinating. In fact, the knowledge which is there in Ayurveda is much more vast than the modern science that we know.
Very nice, very nice. And especially hearing it from a scientist like yourself does add a lot of credibility to a system that at the heart we know has a lot of has a lot of depth into it. So my question to you would be, just to get started, what are the five Panch Mahabhuts when we spoke about? What is the significance and how do they relate to various things that we experience on a day-to-day basis, and the word as we know it, the material world as we know it? How
Right.
do these Panch Mahabhut, what are these? What's the significance? If you could just talk to us about that.
Sure. From looking from a scientific perspective, the Panchabhuta, when said this, everything in this universe is made up of this Panchamahabhuta, or the five elements. So that means the composition of the universe is like a mixture of these five Panchabhuta, and to different degree or proportions. Now, if it's a constituent of a universe, the question comes, where did these come from? So I was intrigued by that, because it goes back to the time of creation, what is understood in our Vedic philosophy or Vedic sciences, I would say, that the creation happens in a pulsatile way. At one time it's unmanifested, and then it's manifested, and it goes in a pulsatile way either way. And there is a time frame which probably runs into billions of years. So when an unmanifested mass or the energy becomes manifested, the first element that appears is what we refer to in Ayurveda as Akasha. Akasha is a space, because till that time, Akasha, I did not understand the significance of Akash. So Akash could be understood that if there is a undifferentiated soup which is unmanifested as yet, if there is a bubble which appears, the bubble grows. So there is a space within this bubble, and that is where all the subsequent creation will happen. So probably there are many such bubbles happening into this undifferentiated mass, and there's a time when these bubbles happen. Probably science understand that as Big Bang, because what we understand Akasha is the basic characteristic of Akasha is also like sound. It can be perceived through the sense of hearing. So there is a correlation between this first element, which is Akasha, with the sense of perception, which is hearing. And the quality of this element is like sound. Of course, we hear only a very small frequency of the sound waves. But in our traditional system, it says that like the primal sound was the Om, from where the entire creation happened. So the Akasha, which happened like a bubble within that undifferentiated mass, was the first thing. So this bubble was not empty; it was filled with vibrations, and that vibration had the characteristics of sound. Now, besides that, then the next element which appeared due to very fast energy dynamics within this bubble, which gave rise to the next element, which is referred to as Vayu, or in English would be air. So, air, if we try to understand in terms of air, then it will be very difficult. Air is actually represents anything which has a movement. So within that energy movements, that created the next element, which is the Vayu, or air, and which had the, like, you could perceive this air through the sense of touch. So with that, with came through the skin, then we can actually perceive air through our perception of touch. So, and the air is not just, probably we'll discuss it more in detail subsequently, but air is not just oxygen and uh, nitrogen. It's much more than that. So the air has a electromagnetic properties. It also is, it has ionic charges like positive and negative, not in the good or bad manner. Positive, negative is always the opposite poles of the ions. So air is surcharged with that. So it has a lot of properties and which can be perceived through touch. Now, again, as the creation continued, the air gave rise to the next element, which was the fire element. The fire element comes with the light and heat. So that is what the next element was. That could be perceived through vision. The fire and light can be seen through eyes. So that is the next version, next step of creation. That is the energy, which is fire. And then the energy formation or the continuation of this creative process continued. The next element came with the what is referred to as jal or vayu, sorry, jal or water.
Water.
So this water can be perceived through taste. So you see now, there is for every element there is a sense perception. There is an organ for sense perception. Then with water came the fluidity, and as it subsequently as the creative process continued, then it made converted into solid mass, which we refer to as earth. So this is how these are actually all these panchabhutas. They represent different state of the matter. The earth would represent the solid phase, the water would represent the liquid phase, the fire would represent all the energy dynamics which happens between this different elements. The air would be the element which is responsible for all the movement, and space which holds everything. So that is my understanding of this panchabhuta, and I'm trying to understand this from a scientific perspective. So this is how probably the creation happened.
Okay, this sounds very interesting, and like I'll just repeat what you said so that I make sure that I have grasped everything. So in the beginning there was space, and then from space then air came next, then from air the next one was fire, then you have water, and then you have earth. So these are the five elements which are there in the Panch Mahabhuta, each having their own distinct characteristics, and kind of in everything that we see in the material world, it's a combination of or an interplay of these five elements displaying themselves in different expressions. So even in our body, even in the plants, even in the everything that we see, there is movement, there is sound, there is a space that is holding everything together, there is of course earth, there is water, and then there is fire. Yeah. So all five. No, this is really interesting. So does that mean like we spoke about these five elements of nature or Panch Mahabhuta. In Ayurveda, you also mentioned about the concept of the tridosh.
Right.
Are they related? Like let's start with, because a lot of these days I think people do have interest in Ayurveda, but they do not fully understand how it works. So now we understand, okay, these are the five elements that make up the body. So if this is my body, so these are the five elements in different proportions are making up my body. But what is this concept of tridosh? Is it some dosh in the body? What is it? Let's, we would love to learn more about it.
Yeah, same thing. I went through this same exercise because once I came across that this is another fundamental principle is tridosha. So one part is that the constitution or the composition of our body, like our body, as we say in this planet Earth, we are 60 to 70% is water. So water is the predominant element, but there are other elements are also present, as you mentioned. Now, one part is the composition, and second part is how do they function. So this functionality, it depends on how they are regulated. So when we talk of tridosha, it's how these elements are used in the regulation of a living system. Like there are three regulatory principles in the tridosha, and if you again go by literal translation, it won't mean anything. It's you said vata, kapha, and pitta. So as a scientist, when I started, I said vata means air, pitta means bile, and kapha means mucus. How can these three things can regulate a living system? So I was a little confused, but again, as I went ahead and tried to understand more, then I realized these are again used metaphorically, and it has a deep meaning. For example, when you talk of vata, vata, as we discussed, is represents air, which has a movement. So any biological process which has a movement would fall under the category of vata. Now, what are the examples? What moves within the physical body is that, for example, movement of blood. movement of digest or the food which goes through the digestive tract, even movement of nerve signals which moves from brain to the peripheral organs through the nerve fibers. So anywhere there's a movement, even at a molecular cellular level, when is any ligand which binds to the receptor on the cell surface, there is a signal transduction happens which goes up to the gene. So there is a movement even at a cellular level. So any movement which you see in a biological system is regulated by vata. So all those processes were categorized under this part of the tridosha. Now the second category is what we refer to as pitta. Now pitta again is a symbolic. Pitta means bile. Bile. What is bile? We understand scientifically bile is a metabolic byproduct of the cholesterol metabolism. And so, what it was being referred to as all the metabolic processes, which were categorized under this category, which also involves all the energy transactions. So, all the metabolic processes, which where the energy transformation happens, or there is an exchange of energy in the form of electrons, which are categorized under this what we call as this pitta. Third category is kapha, which again in a literal translation will mean mucus. What does mucus do? If you understand mucus, it wouldn't mean anything. But mucus is a protective layer which protects our what you call our mucosal epithelium. And you see mucus in the nasal tract, in the digestive tract, wherever this our body opens to the exterior, that channel is always being protected by mucus layer. Because if there is no mucus, then the bacteria and virus will enter and immediately get into the cell or into the body. So it's the mucus which traps it, and that's how we are always protected. So what it was referred to as the something which protects this the organism. So what they were referring to was something like the immune system, is the immune system which protects. And also immune system has dual function. It protects our body against any external invasion. And if there is a damage, it also does the repair work. So what I understood science as a scientist, that vata is all the movement, any biological process which has movement. Kapha is the all the metabolic processes within the body, and kapha would be the protective mechanism, which is like immune system. So these are the three regulatory principles. Now, vata, when you say, it's not again a symbol, it's a combination of akash and air. So these two elements form the vata. Pitta is mostly the fire, predominantly, and kapha would be water and earth. So these elements which constitute our body, which also forms the regulatory principles. So that's how our body physiology is being regulated by these three systems. And these three uh, principles should be balanced in order to have a healthy life. If there is any imbalance, then it will translate into a disorder. So that needs to be corrected and brought back to the again what we call as the balancing the tridosha. So these are the two major fundamental principles that I found in Ayurveda, and that's very very fascinating.
This is this is again really interesting, and I'm always very intrigued by how this the entire system works. So like the five elements which are kind of making up the entire body, and then there are three dosha like vata, pitta, and kapha, how they are each responsible for a cross functional thing. Something that we miss sometimes in allopathy is a very reductionist view of the body. Like, this is liver, this is how it functions, this is heart, this is brain. Whereas these three systems that you mentioned, you did not name the organ. These
Yeah.
are kind of the forces that are together to create the system that we are. Like you mentioned about vata, which is kind of controlling all the movement in the body. Then there is pitta, which is controlling the metabolic processes. And then kapha, which is protecting us and kind of giving us a structure in this entire process. So that's their beauty. And the more you get into a human body, I think it starts looking more and more magical, and more, I think, very beautiful. So how do you think, like, the balance between these three forces uh, is responsible for either the state of homeostasis or the state of disease? Like, the disbalances, how is that causing the disease? And so how does it do it? I would like to know that. And also for the audience, how do they maintain this balance so that they do not, if they have a disease, they can look to kind of stop the progression, or at least what can they do, what can a person do to create this balance, and why does it get disturbed? So like, if I asked two questions in one, but
Yeah.
maybe first we can ask about we can discuss about what balances or disbalances these three systems.
Okay. So, in terms of balance now, since if all these three systems should be balanced, and if there is any imbalance that translates into a disorder, so each one, as we has mentioned, that each of this, like vata, when we say is air and akasha, so if the vata is more or less, it can be controlled by these two elements. Same way, the if the our metabolic processes, there is something disorder, the same energy has to be controlled. Like for fire element, all these things which can control fire has to be used. Same way, a third thing, that is the kapha or immune system, all the substances which regulate this thing can be used to bring out the balance. So balance, homeostasis thing, that we know that anything which is overperforming or underperforming, both ways will end up in having a disorder. That's why all the diseases that we see, they are either hypertension or hypotension, hyperglycemia or hypoglycemia, or hyperthyroidism, hypothyroid. Why this is? Because either these are imbalanced in a way that they are over functioning the system, or they're underperforming. So in either case, we need to bring the balance. And there are also two levels of the balance that is required. Now, if we have to understand our human body, there are two components, two aspects of that. Just like a computer, we know that we have a hardware and we have a software. So these are the two components of the same. Without software, hardware is will not be functional, and software alone cannot be of any use. So both have to be together. And besides that, besides hardware and software, you need yet another element, which is the energy. You have to connect your laptop or desktop to power, because to get the energy. Without that energy, will this both things will not function. So equivalent of that in our our human body would be the physical body would be equivalent to or similar to like the hardware, and the mind would be like a software. So both mind and body actually function together, and for that we require the energy. Now, in a computer, you only require only one type of energy, that is electrical energy. But in human body, there are five different, all the sensory inputs actually can be used as a for receiving the energy. So there are energy which comes from like earth. It comes from all the food that we eat, which provides all the nutrition and energy. And if we are eating the right kind of food, so we'll have the right balance in the earth element. Same way, when we see, say, water, obviously we think in terms of tap water or some river, but water is also something that like we eat from nature, like fruit juices. Those are also water. And you will see that nature, there are different types of fruits which we find in different seasons. In winter, mostly you'll find all this what you call citrus fruits, whereas in summer you will find all the watermelon kind of too. So they are also water, but they are therapeutic waters. So that's why when you drink those water in the right season, then you will also have the therapeutic effect. So water as such can, in that sense, can be used for therapeutic purposes. Now, for balancing this earth element, like for kapha, then the second element is the fire, or this what you call the pitta. So
Yeah.
that can be balanced using the light, and that has been my interest also. So how light can control the energy systems within our body, and that light, when we refer, originally light comes from sun. So sun has a tremendous effect. So it can actually regulate any of the biological systems. You can increase or decrease any biological system depending on what kind of frequency you're using. So if you are exposing yourself to the sunlight, like you have been discussing about the early morning sun, that's after sunrise, there you get the right kind of vibrations. And if you are exposed to that, your system will function normally, because these are the essential components that we need. Normally, what people do, that they are afraid to go out in the sun. Why? One thing, because they feel that their skin will get darkened because of the pigmentation, or they will get sunburned. So what happens that when we talk of sunlight, it's not a single entity. There are first, there are 7 different frequencies of light. Those we perceive as seven different colors. Now from red to violet, there are Vidgyur, what we call as. Now beyond violet is the ultraviolet, and beyond red is the infrared. So all the damages that we see is because of either because of ultraviolet or because of the infrared. But all the 7 frequencies which are in between, which are, we refer to them as a visible frequency of light or visible light, those are essential, and we do need those to balance our system. So that's what, when we get exposure to the sunlight, we absorb that energy. And thirdly, the air, of course. So we know that we take that energy through the breathing. Now when we talk of air, normally people will understand air just as a mixture of oxygen and nitrogen, but that's not true. Even science has not reached to the understanding of the air. So air is not oxygen and nitrogen. I'll give you an example. Suppose if I take a glass of water and I add 1 spoon of sugar and dissolve it, it will be a clear solution. Then I take a spoon of salt, I dissolve it, it will be again it dissolve and become a clear solution. Now, if I say the definition of water water is a mixture of sugar and salt, so this will be a wrong definition. Water is not a mixture of sugar and salt, but water is carrying sugar and salt dissolved into it. That will be the correct way of putting it. Same way, when we say oxygen, nitrogen, and other gases, the air is carrying those gases. Air is not oxygen. So actually, when we breathe 2 things. We breathe oxygen and we breathe air. And oxygen is utilized for all oxidative metabolism in the body, which is absorbed through the lungs, goes to our red blood cells, and which take it to different parts of the body. And there is an energy exchange, and then we release that in the carbon dioxide. So that is one part of the breathing process. The second part, which people, the science has not reached or learned about, that is the actual air element, which is the energy for the mind. That's why all the yogic processes, all the exercise are based on the breathing process. And interestingly, breathing process is the only biological process which is under voluntary and involuntary control both. This is the only biological process. Your heartbeat, you cannot control. This is involuntary. Your hand movement is voluntary. It will not happen involuntarily. But breathing is the only thing you can do voluntarily. And as soon as you stop breathing voluntarily or consciously breathing, it will stop and go into it will take over, like unconsciously you will start breathing, which is under involuntary control. So that gives a clue that why it is so, that how breathing is important, and you, by regulating the breathing process, you can regulate both mind and body. So that is the principle of the yogic breathing exercises and all the kriya processes. So that is the element which regulates this, our third element, which is for akasha and air. So, vata and akasha, of course, is again, as we said, we discussed this, as the sound is the quality, and sound can also be used as a therapeutic ingredient. And therefore, a lot of sounds which are, when you go out in the nature, for example, when you go to a forest, you feel good. Why? Because of that, there is a natural sound. When you go to the ocean, when you see this waves of ocean coming and you hear those concentrate, you also feel relaxed. So all these 5 Pancha in the form of the tridosha, these are the 3 regulatory principles, they can have a therapeutic effect. So if there is any imbalance between these, you can correct it using any of the 5. But mostly the Ayurvedic principle, they use the herbal medicine, which is the part of the earth, because earth gives rise to all these plants. And there are plants categorized which can regulate our all the 3 systems, like kapha. There are this is what I was studying at, this immunomodulatory effect of the medicinal plants. So I was looking at those plants which has effect on the immune system. Similarly, there are set of plants which are effect on our hormonal system. There are also plants which also have effect on our neural system. Like, for example, it give you Brahmi, which is very good
Yes.
for our brain and neurological system. So there are, so like in each category you will find plants. So what the Ayurvedic doctors, when he sees you, he will find first what are the imbalances, and depending on the imbalances, they prescribe these different permutation combination of medicinal plants. So that is one part of the treatment. But there are other elements also which can be used for therapeutic purposes.
This is absolutely amazing, and especially hearing it from a research scientist who has studied at UCLA, Harvard Medical School, and how like the ancient wisdom in India is like indeed very deep. This is extremely interesting, and especially the example that you gave is too good, which is the body is the hardware, the mind is the software, and we are consuming energy through our senses in different forms at all the times. So whether it is like we are consuming sunlight as energy, or we are consuming food as energy, or the water in the food as energy, like, and you absolutely mentioned perfectly that the food itself, especially we keep on talking about in all the UVAP podcast, people who watch us, we speak about rainbow diet, eating vegetables as they are. And I was also discussing once with a friend who has a farmhouse. She said, you have cucumber, squirrel comes, and squirrel actually just opens the cucumber like a lid of a water bottle, drinks the water in the cucumber, and then just goes. So all these, the natural vegetables like the watermelon, the cucumber, these are all sources of water for us. And it is so good to not just think of water as simple water, but all these foods which nature has given us, the beautiful rainbow color fruits, which are all form of vegetables for us. And the oxygen example is air example is perfect. And I think that really gets us thinking that yes, if you dissolve sugar in water, water is not sugar. The sugar is part of this solution that you got, but water is much more than the sugar itself. And hence, maybe this is absolutely right that air is not just oxygen, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, but it is much more. And that is why maybe you go out in the nature, fresh air, suddenly things start changing. We don't know the full maybe the biochemistry of it, but you can surely feel it कि कुछ तो बढ़िया हुआ है अभी. जैसे ही I start touching earth, I start being in nature, in sunlight, your body starts giving you signs कि something good is happening. So I think, and you are very right that all this is the energy the body is consuming. So body को energy दिया, body becomes happy, and that's quite simple.
Yeah, yeah,
And yes, absolutely, you mentioned about the sound and how sound can be used for healing as well. And this is something we also believe at UVAP, because we do have UVAP music for the soul as our channel, through which we do meditations, and a lot of those are based on the ancient raga therapy. So the Carnatic ragas, the Hindustani ragas, how these ragas affect different parts of the brain. So that's the the music therapist who is involved there. So that's the kind of science which is there. And we do see scientific reports on it, and researchers like you are working on it. I think it's now time that the common man can take advantage of these things and utilize them in their daily lives. So on this, I'd like to ask you, now that in this part of the conversation, we discussed that the whole body that we have is not one organ, one thing. It's actually a system. Whether we spoke about the five elements. Now the brain is also made up of those five elements, these hands are also made up of those five elements, the heart is also made up of those five elements. Even vat, pit, and kapha, they are also not at one location. They are kind of located at everywhere, and depending upon what is the purpose, the different one comes at force at that point in time. So why do you think a lot of people who are listening to us may be going through some sort of problem? Maybe they have obesity, maybe they have diabetes, they have BP, they have cholesterol, they have PCOD, or different type of lifestyle illnesses. Why do you think looking at the root cause of a problem is an important thing that every person should be thinking about? कि मुझे ये बीमारी हुआ क्यों? Why is that important, and why is that approach important in medicine?
Absolutely. And I will start with a simple example. Suppose we are sitting here and talking, and then suddenly the fire alarm goes off. And that will be very disturbing because we know that fire alarm is very, very inconvenient. It will cause disturbance and it's very unpleasant. So what we'll do, suppose if we go and we say, okay, let's switch off the fire alarm and continue our this discussion. So, so if we do that, what happens? Yes, we can finish this talk probably discussing comfortably, but without realizing that there is somewhere fire, and the fire alarm was giving actually a warning that there is a fire. But what we did was, for our convenience, we simply switched it off. So that's exactly what we do when we take these medicines, which are only symptomatic. So when suppose if you, in fact, the pain is the most important fire alarm in our body. So whenever you have pain, this pain is indicating that please attend to that place. There is something wrong there. So you go and focus on that and do whatever is required to be done. But instead of that, you take a painkiller and you switch off the fire alarm. So you are happy because you continue with your life and without realizing that there is a much deeper issue, which is because of that this pain is happening. So till your medicine effect lasts, your pain will be gone, but again it will come back. So if we do not look at the actual cause of that pain, we'll never get rid of that. So that is what actually what in our, unfortunately, the modern science has gone into, modern medicine has gone into more of a symptomatic treatment. Most of the treatments are, you will see they are symptomatic, and except for only few, when we talk of only infections, there are drugs which are directed against the disease causing agent, that is bacteria or virus or fungus. But the rest of the diseases, they're only treating, we are only treating the symptoms. If the sugar is high, you take a drug which will lower down the sugar. But why the sugar should be high or sugar should be low, whether why the blood pressure should be high or should be low, we simply, if there's a blood pressure, what we do, we use a vasodilator. So the blood vessels, they will expand, so automatically pressure will drop, and suddenly, so you are fine, you keep taking this medicine, your blood pressure will be under control. But why there should be blood pressure, first of all? So that we did not find the cause. So therefore, as you rightly said, the most important thing is to find the root cause of that. And that is all the basic principle of our traditional system medicine, Ayurveda, because the doctors would go in deeper into where the cause lies, not treating the symptoms alone, but treating the cause. And once you treat the symptom, treat the cause, symptoms will automatically disappear. And that's probably the reason that Ayurveda treatments take little longer than the modern medicine is very good for acute situation, for emergency situation. There is no comparison, because if somebody is getting a heart attack, you cannot
Yeah,
go to an Ayurvedic doctor. And
absolutely.
so for emergency situation, modern medicine is excellent. You have to do whatever is needed to be done. But for a chronic condition, you cannot keep on treating the symptoms. So you must go deeper into the root cause of the disease and identifying that, and then bring the balance back. So that is what the philosophy of Ayurveda, and that's what the Ayurvedic principle is.
No, no, this is again, like, hearing it from a research scientist is extremely, comforting to the view that, UVAP has always held, which is find your why, find the root cause of what's happening to you, whether it is weight gain, whether it is, your diabetes, your any type of chronic condition. And as you very rightly mentioned, for acute situations, of course, we have to go to hospital, of course, we have to go to modern medicine. But something which is a result of a lifestyle, how can you just stop the
Right.
symptom there and expect everything to be okay, and not, the pipe will burst somewhere else now after a few
Yeah.
years, then what will
Right.
you do?
Yeah.
So I want to now learn from you about your experience, given now the research that you are doing in phototherapy as well. Have you seen holistic practices, like you mentioned about diet, you mentioned about pranayam as well, you mentioned about sound therapy, you mentioned about sunlight therapy, and a good diet. Have you seen, what type of results have you seen in people having chronic conditions? And if you could just share a few cases where you have seen, and what were their problems, how did it get resolved, what type of lifestyle, diet changes, sunlight changes, or phototherapy changes they did, because that will give hope to a lot of people who are listening this, because a lot of people could be suffering today because of their diabetes, because of their autoimmune conditions, and we want to learn from your experience. What have you seen with the patients that you have worked with?
Okay. So first of all, I would say that as a scientist, I started working on the immunological interventions because immune system is responsible for defending us against all, for example, external invasions, or if there is any damage which is caused by even internal processes, then the immune system would also repair those. Its immune system is just like our armed forces, so which is guarding our borders. So if there is any invasion, they will go protect us. They will protect the boundaries of the country. And if there is at the same time, if there is a natural calamity, for example, the same armed forces will do the rescue operation. They will build bridges, they will build roads, and they will try to bring back the normalcy. So immune system exactly does that. It, on one hand, it protects against all the disease causing agent. Secondly, if there is a damage has been done, it does the repair work. So both are essential. So my being an immunologist, my focus was how to use immune system to find therapeutic applications of that. Now, in the process, the first uh, element was which I used was the earth element. That was the project that I started with when I started using studying the effects of these medicinal plants on the immune system. So the source of medicinal plants were identified in Ayurveda, but we did not know how it acts on the immune system. So that was my actually research project was. So I studied each of these plants. We made chemical fractionation and isolated the fractions which were active fractions and looked at how it's acting on the immune system. So we did find that there was a group of plants which could increase the immunity, other group of plants which could decrease the immunity. And there were some plants which could actually work in both ways, which are called adaptogens or called Rasayana plants, which when I started, I did not understand what this group was. That these plants, if you take, there are certain group of number of plants, which if your immune system is operating at a higher frequency, it will bring it down. If it is low, it will bring it up. So it will create the balance on its own. So those are the group of plants which are called Rasayana plants. So when I studied that, I found amazed that how the same molecule, same plant can do both the things. So these are the immunomodulatory plants. That was my study. So that on that basis, I developed therapeutic modalities using these medicinal plants for various things. So wherever the immune system is involved, like if immune system is underperforming, you are vulnerable to infections or even cancer, because cancer keeps happening to us on a daily basis. Any time cancer, what is cancer? It's nothing but a normal cell becoming an abnormal. So if a normal cell becomes abnormal, our immune system would immediately recognize it and eliminate it. If it fails to do so, if it fails to recognize this abnormal cell, that abnormal cell will keep growing, and that down the lane it will be diagnosed as a cancer, as a tumor. So that is what happens when immune system fails to recognize this abnormal cell. It's just like if a normal citizen in a city like Mumbai, if a person becomes a criminal, the police force should eliminate or arrest that person. Otherwise, that person will cause more damage. Suppose police does not know who is a normal and who is a criminal, then the problem will happen. So this is exactly the immune system. When it fails to recognize an abnormal cell, it goes up to become a cancerous tissue. So therefore, you are keeping the immune system alert or upregulated is very, very important, even to prevent any kind of infections. But on the other side, if immune system is overperforming or excessively performing, then you have another set of problems, disease, which are all inflammatory conditions, which are even autoimmune diseases. So autoimmune disease is what happens when immune system is attacking your own body. So that causes the damage to your own body. So in those situations, we need to bring down the immune system. We need to regulate that. So on both sides, if one side you have to increase the immunity, other side you have to decrease. So this is what my research was, and I identified these natural products which were used in Ayurveda, how we can modulate this immune system. So that was one part of the project. Then subsequently, I had another project where I was studying the effect of environmental factors on the immune system. So this was again funded by Ministry of Science and Technology, where I was studying the effect of various environmental factors on the immune system. And so there I identified that's how I identified the light as one of the major factors which regulates the immune system. Of course, we all know that light regulates the circadian rhythm of our body, the hormonal profile and everything. But immune system also it impacts. That was very, very interesting for me. So I carried out a lot of experiments where I kept the laboratory experimental models under light and dark conditions. And I saw that, yes, when you keep these experimental animals under dark conditions, their immunity goes down. Their ability to respond to a challenge like antigenic, viral, like bacterial challenge goes down. So that was very surprising that in absence of light, this thing happens. So that gave me an idea. If absence of light could cause in the decline of immunity, can I bring back the immunity by re-exposing them to light? So this is the second part of the experiment. When I did, I found yes, it can be corrected. But in the second time, what I did not use the only the white light. I used different frequency of light. Of course, to start with, I used very improvised boxes where I put bulb with the color filters, with all the 7 color filters. And when I did this experiment, I found that some colors, frequencies, they increase the immunity, other frequencies, they suppress the immunity. So that was very, very interesting that within the frequency of sunlight from red to violet, one side of the spectrum enhances the immunological response, other side it reduces the response. So what you need is to balance the both. So that's why it's very, very important to expose ourselves to the sunlight, especially during morning and in the evening before sunset. Because during daytime, yes, because of the ultraviolet frequencies are also very increased on infrared also. So there you may have feel little uncomfortable. But early morning or late in the evening would be the ideal time to expose it to sunlight. That is for prevention of any disorder. But suppose if something has gone wrong already because of our lifestyle and all that, how do you correct that using light? That has been my second project where I'm using this light frequencies to bring back the immunity where it's low, bring back to normal, and where it's over functioning, how can I bring back? So based on that, my research, I designed a medical device which can produce all the 7 frequencies of light, and that can be used to expose an area which needs to be treated. So I can modulate the immune system. So we are offering it. So, for example, pain management. What is pain management? It's an inflammatory process, which is an immunological response to any kind of damage which has happened. So immune system immediately tries to fix it. And
Yes.
in the process, it produces certain factors which we perceive as a pain. So that's how the immune system functions. So instead of reducing the pain, you help the immune system to repair the damage. So as soon as the damage is repaired, the pain automatically is gone. So this is what the principle I'm working on. So I'm using light for that. So like that, I still continues my research. I want to use the sound vibration also for modulating. My focus will always be, because being an immunologist, I am trying to study the immune system, but how immune system can be regulated by different sound frequencies. So that is also a part of my research, but I have not reached yet to developing a protocol for that. But this is what I am doing now.
No, this is again like very very interesting, and especially the way you are mentioning it, it just makes the case for personalized medicine stronger and stronger, because every person's problem is unique, and as you are mentioning about particularly about the immune system, in some cases it is lack of immune system which is causing the problem, like cancers and like your everyday infection, and in some cases it could be the excess energy of the immune system that is causing the problem, like your allergies, like your autoimmune conditions.
Good.
And how, by using natural tools, like you mentioned about the earth aspect first, which is through food and medicinal herbs, and then you mentioned about the sun aspect or the light aspect, where through using these natural tools we are trying to see whatever is the under or over usage in this particular person, so accordingly is being corrected using light, corrected using using the elements of food, in that. So this is very interesting, and I think. As you rightly mentioned, like, and this we discussed in our sunlight podcast as well, that why people get more sick in winter months is not because the virus or the bacteria are more in winter months and less in summers, is because the immune system becomes weaker in winters compared to summertime when there is more sunlight, and that's why people are always sneezing in winter
Right.
months. No, and you know the more I get into it, the more is the magic I start seeing in each of these things. Like you spoke about rasayanas and adaptogens, and how the same herb or the same food can be used as a बैलेंसिंग. सो मतलब अगर बॉडी में वो कम है तो ऑटोमेटिकली वो ज्यादा कर देगा, और ज्यादा है तो वो ऑटोमेटिकली कम कर देगा. एंड दिस इज समथिंग दैट वी हैव ऑल्सो सीन इन आवर एक्सपीरियंस व्हेन वी आर हेल्पिंग पीपल लूज वेट. फॉर एग्जाम्पल इन यूबैप प्रोग्राम्स व्हाट वी हैव सीन इज कि एक्सेस होता है तो वो एक लेवल तक ही गिरता है, उसके बाद वो सेम लाइफस्टाइल को रखेंगे, अब और नहीं गिरेगा, अब वो रुक जाएगा. So body and these natural tools, they have a inherent inbuilt intelligence. ऐसा नहीं कि मतलब वो करे ही जा रहे हैं, मतलब, and especially when you are using in natural ways, and that's the magic of it. So do you like, and you also, when we were speaking the other day, you also mentioned about the effect of light therapy you have seen on skin conditions as well. So if you could share a little bit of that, because a lot of female clients that we have, a lot of female audience that we have, they're always looking at something that can enhance their skin or reduce the blemishes. And so what kind of results have you seen of these natural therapeutic elements on skin health?
Yes. The skin basically is the largest immune organ. So although we have spleen and other lymph nodes and other things, the blood, immune cells circulating in the blood, but skin is the largest organ anyway, first place. And skin, as I said, the immune cells are always doing surveillance because they keep on moving just below the skin, because the idea is to, if there is any damage in the skin or if any bacterial virus enters into, they will like to stop that. So, and then, as I said, the other side of that, if there is a damage in the skin, if you have cut on the wounds or something, then immediately the immune system will reach there and try to fix it and heal the wound. So since it does both, it protects and also repairs. So all the skin problems are because of our either imperfection of the immunity or they are overperforming. If the immune system, with the age, of course, the immune system is weakens, and that's where the immune system cannot produce that kind of growth factors which are responsible for production of collagen. So collagen is a or is a like a ground substance on which all the skin cells are based. Suppose if the collagen there is a depletion because of the not enough production of collagen, then you will see the depressions, and then that depression from exterior surface will look as wrinkles. So that is what we call as aging process because of the depletion of the collagen. Now, if you normally people will go if there is a such kind of things happening, they will go for Botox or they will go for fillers just to fill those gaps. It's just like, again, I give very crude example. When you drive on the Bombay roads, if there are potholes, you come and fill the sand, but it looks very okay. Now we have done the job, but again, after some time, the sand will come off. So again, you keep on filling those gaps. So rather, instead of that, you make a concrete road once for all, and then there will never be anything. So this is what the nature does. So our immune system produces certain growth factors which act on the fibroblasts. These are the cells which produce collagen. So if the immune system is active, they will keep activating the fibroblasts to produce collagen. Of course, there is always a turnover. So as soon as the collagen is depleted, a new collagen will be formed. So your skin becomes absolutely young and it looks perfect. So that is from one's perspective. Second part is that many times the skin, there are infection happen, which we call as acne normally, because of the hormonal changes. There is more of a sebaceous oil production, and then the bacteria will try to get into those pores and then start growing, and that's how acne happens. So acne, one thing is that there is a bacterial infection. Second, there is this inflammation around that because the bacteria is there, immune system is trying to look. So there is a redness and there is a swelling, and it looks, that's what we see as a acne. So now to control that, again, We can use light because there are certain frequency of light that can control the bacterial population. It can kill the bacteria, and the other side of the fraction which does the repair job. So then you can have that. Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention that for collagen production also, there are certain frequency of light which can activate the immune system to produce the growth factors, which in turn will produce the collagen. So using this light therapy, you can actually enhance the collagen production to have a flattened skin, which will be glowing skin and absolutely look normal. If you have acne, then again, a different setting of light, one part of the frequency will act against the bacteria, other side will be treating the enhancing the repair job, which is has happened due to the damage caused by the bacteria. So then again, skin becomes perfect. There are conditions in the skin that what we call as pigmentation, and the pigmentation happens because the melanocytes, there are cells which produce the pigment melanin, and these melanin pigments, if it's overproduced, then it will become the dark patches. So again, the melanocytes are under the control of the immune system. So when your immune system is not performing well or is overperforming, then again the melanocytes would also behave differently. So you can control that also. And since immune system can be controlled by light, you can also have a treatment for that. So any kind of skin condition uh, could be treated through via immune system and using the light energy. So that's what my work has been, and I have developed those treatment protocols. So,
No, this is
so if you try,
absolutely like, and I'm sure to all the female clients or all the female audience who are listening, in this is something which is music to their ears, because I have also always believed in being very natural, but at the same time, the fact that your skin should be good, I think this is every woman's or every girl's dream, or like anybody, like nobody wants
yeah,
pigmentation, nobody wants acne and all those things. And if there are natural solutions to that, then this is something people would like to explore, and people would like to listen to, because especially when you are using those chemical creams and all those things, not everybody is comfortable with that, especially if you are using botox and things like that. Again, not everybody would be comfortable unless you are in the beauty industry, and unless you're doing something there. But even there, like I have seen people, and always people do have a preference for natural and more holistic ways of treatment compared to the shortcuts, which could offer temporary benefits, like the example you gave, like potholes on the road, but they do look like patchwork. They can never be as good as the natural stuff. So if we do have solution, I think this is something, and the fact that there is research happening, the fact that you have created protocols around it, I think this is something very interesting. And this is so do you think, and now in a lot of conversation that we have had so far, there are talks about systematic things, like the panch mahabhut or the vata pitta kapha, again systematic things, or like even in the solutions part of things, we spoke about the the natural watermelon which is there, the natural cucumber, the natural citrus fruits, or the sunlight. uh, and at the same time, we also spoke about in some people, in their situation, the root cause of their problem is very unique to them. In some cases, their root cause is because their immune system is overactive because of the stress they may be going through, or various other things.
right.
Do you feel right now the system of medicine which is there, it's very non-personalized? Like anybody who gets diabetes gets metformin, anybody who has cholesterol will get statins, anybody who gets a headache takes crocin, right? The reason for that headache could be n number of things. It could be your hormone imbalance, it could be you are dehydrated, it could be anything, you're stressed at work. So do you think the future of healthcare is personalized wellness, personalized nutrition, personalized medicine? What do you say to that?
Absolutely, because each person is very, very different. Because and that Ayurvedic composition of Kapha Pitta Vayu that explains. And yes, in scientific terminology also, we are genetically very different. Each person, we have a different genetic kind of expression that level. although it's the same genetic pool, but no two-person behave similarly to same kind of challenge. Like even when we saw COVID, not everybody got COVID. I did not get COVID, but there are many people who got COVID and became very serious also. So why that happens? Because somebody's immune system is active enough or can handle this kind of challenges and other person cannot handle. So these are the individual variations are there. So same way in everything, like so modern medicine is, as you mentioned, they are mostly a uniform kind of thing. This for one size fits all kind of kind of situation. So these are because they are mostly treating the symptoms. So you're treating, as I said, headache. So you take crocin, so you're treating only the fire alarm. You're switching off the fire alarm. So same way, but not the cause of that headache. So same way for all, even diabetes. Why diabetes should happen? Yes, we know diabetes. There is a like sugar is going up, or when the hypoglycemia, there is sugar level is going down. But why that should happen? So we need to understand that many of the diseases, what is understood, like I've going into the Ayurveda, most of the diseases are caused at the level of mind and manifested at the physical level. It's not that only physical body. There are, of course, like if there is an infection, this could be at the physical plane only. But there are many diseases which happen at the level of mind, which could be level. So there are mental blocks, there are energy blocks within, because human body for medical sciences we see only the cells and bones and flesh, and that's all. But according to our ayurvedic, there are five different sheets in the body. So first is say annamaya kosha, then there's a manomaya kosha, then pranamaya kosha, then vijnanamaya kosha, and then anandamaya kosha. There are five layers of this body which make the human body. So what we are talking about is Annamaya Kosha, which is developing from the food that we eat. Yes, those are vulnerable to infections and this thing that exactly this causes at the level of the physical body. But there is also a Manomaya Kosha, which is the mind. If a person is undergoing stress or person is going through some emotional uh, issues, so that would translate also into the physical body. For example, diabetes is not a disease of the physical body. Any autoimmune disease is not a disease of the physical body. Something wrong at the level of minds. There is some blocks. And there are some correlations that people who have some kind of, say, if the guilt feeling and this thing, that could translate into autoimmune disease. If there is an anger, there could be, if it's a blocked anger which cannot be expressed, that could lead to kind of inflammatory conditions. So all those mental emotional condition also translate into the physical body. So then what happens in the modern medicine, you are treating only the physical body, the symptoms, but real cause is at the level of mind. So that's where we require a personalized treatment. When you go to ayurvedic doctor, he takes the complete history from the childhood till now, and even all the circumstances, the live, how you behave, what are the other issues, not only just looking at your physical body. And then they decide for each person, they tailor-made this kind of treatments is given. So it's actually both the physical body and mind has to be taken into consideration when you are designing the treatment. So that is still missing, that part in the modern science, because body and mind, like in modern way, it's like hardware is dealt by the doctors and the software is dealt by the psychologists. So there is no crosstalk between the two. So once the day it happens, then probably we'll find a better solutions.
Correct, correct, correct. No, no, and I absolutely love your explanation of hardware and software. And like you mentioned, the hardware is dealt by the doctors, and software, I don't think anybody is dealing, because people don't go to psychiatrists. Like, really, if something has gone wrong, only in those cases people go. Otherwise,
Yes.
software is at the mercy of whatever happens. It's like
Yes.
like that. So and
Right.
and and that's why, like, even at UAP we have programs which look at the physical. So of course, the known diseases that you have, the known symptoms that you have, because maybe the scales on your nails, they're a sign of something. Your hair fall is a sign of something. Those acne is a sign of something. And then the emotional profile that you have, whether you have anger issues, whether you have anxiety issues, envy issues, because as you rightly mentioned, that they do result in a problem. They have the potential to result in a problem later on. If I have suppressed anger, maybe my pitta will go out of balance, because it's like,
Yeah.
heat is, anger is heat and pitta is again
Right.
heat. So,
Right.
they could have implication. And so is my social, even, in our programs we do have our attention on the social aspects as well. What is your corporate life like, what is your family life like, because they do impact your mental health at all levels. And as you rightly mentioned, the mental and the physical, it's the hardware and the software. How can you expect the hardware to work if software is not in place? And as
Right.
energy, which you defined, like, your right food, right sunlight, right earth, geomagnetic energy is not in place. So this is extremely interesting. And this coming from your research experience and what you have seen in 4 decades of experience in this field is extremely, I think, beneficial for the audience, because people are now getting a little tired of these symptomatic medicines, especially for chronic things. Because I see so many people these days, they say कि दवाई कभी कम तो होती नहीं है. Like, people start with one medicine for diabetes, कुछ बीपी, but over years तो वो बढ़ती ही है. जितनी
Right.
बार आप अस्पताल जाते हो, एक दो एक्स्ट्रा ही ले आते हो,
Right.
unless you are doing something at the holistic level. And this is something which is there in the society, and I think the work that you are doing is extremely beneficial for people, because this is breakthrough stuff that you are talking about. Most of the people are still doing symptomatic, and what you are talking, I think that should become mainstream, that should become like the primary solution. हाँ, उससे नहीं हो रहा, कुछ acute situation हो गई है, तब मुझे वो
Right.
chemicals लेने ही हैं, तब मुझे वो heart attack आ गया, of course you have to go to emergency room. But first line of treatment should be the holistic practices, and then if something is very very serious, then you have to take modern medicine. No,
Yes.
so this is so good. And any concluding remarks that you would like to make, sir?
So that unfortunately in India, I have been studying through the Western medicine and Western philosophy. That's been probably the drawback, because then I myself realized when I started working on this field, I wish I knew this Ayurveda. This thing should be taught from the beginning, of from the part of the medical curriculum also, so that then you will have a holistic kind of understanding of the human system. So it's not just you treat the symptoms. So if until that happens, when we combine, when there is integration of this kind of various different systems of medicine, probably that would bring out probably a better solution, which would be non-invasive, which will have not no side effects, but still have the therapeutic value of that. So this is what I think should be done. So in fact, we are sitting on a gold mine of knowledge. Our
Hmm.
Ayurveda still, I think there's still a lot for science has to learn a lot of things from this Ayurveda and our Vedic knowledge that we have. So if we combine and integrate that, then probably we'll find better solutions.
Absolutely, absolutely. And coming from a scientist, and how much you are validating the knowledge which is there in our Indian culture, the thousands of years of old knowledge, which maybe it was thousands of years old, but it is, the more science explores it, the more, like, we do realize कि वो चीजें were not अंधविश्वास, they were all like very very
Yes,
scientific
absolutely.
in their endeavors. So thank you so much, sir, and I am so privileged to have this association with yourself at UVAP, because this is something that we have always believed in. And getting your validation, getting, like, people like you to talk about it to other, to the audience at large, validates a lot of things. And I think the work that you are doing is exemplary, and this is what should come out. And more and more people will get the benefits of these natural treatments, minus the side effects which come with the traditional modern medicine. So thank you so much for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you in more of our future podcast.
Thank you so much. In fact, it's my pleasure talking to you, and you are doing a fantastic job, the UVAP and all, and trying to bring this knowledge to the people and making them understand how they can have their better quality of life. Thank you so much for giving me
Thank
this
you.
opportunity to
Thank you,
talk to you.
sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.